All right, welcome to Chapter 3 on Inequalities in One Variable. This is Section 3.1 on inequalities. So linear inequalities. So a solution is an interval of numbers that is true, and it can be drawn on a number line. So for instance, if we know that it's going to be including all numbers from 0 to the left, we'll make a closed circle at 0, and then we can kind of draw our line to the left. Now our closed circle disappeared, but that's okay. Another way we can do it is if it's everything including that, we can put a bracket, okay? Now let's say maybe it included also all numbers greater than 2. Well, greater than 2 but not equal to, we would have an open circle. And so then we could draw something like that direction. Now, the other way to do this, instead of a bracket this time, we're going to have a parenthesis. So brackets are parentheses and closed circles are open circles. All of them work the same. It just depends on how you want to do it or how things are set up in different places. So what is an inequality? Well, it's a relation between two numbers as a set of numbers. And we have, again, like I said, greater than. Well, in that case, we can have an open circle or a parenthesis. Greater than or equal to, well, then we have our closed circle, or we have a bracket. Less than, well, here we'd again open circle or parenthesis, and I'm putting the parentheses and brackets in the direction that it's going. So it's going to be greater than or equal to that, so it's going to be going this direction. This is going to be less than, so it's going to be going that direction. And here we have less than or equal to, we're going to have a solid, or we'll have a bracket. Okay, so those are the ways to kind of help us be able to draw things. Now, what is a linear inequality? Well, it's just basically a linear equation, and instead of the equals here, we have an inequality, whether it's a greater than or a less than or greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. It doesn't matter which one we use. It depends on what the problem says. Now, again, it's linear, so we have ax plus b, and usually we'd say equals c, but in this case we have greater than c. Okay, so that's the key difference between a linear inequality and a linear equality. So equality, we would have equals there. Now, interval notation. Well, what is that? Well, we're going to write the solution from the inequality to interval notation where greater than or less than are parentheses, kind of like I was talking about when we draw it. We can do it that way too. And greater than or equal to or less than or equal to are brackets. Now with infinity, whether it's a positive or negative infinity, we're always going to use parentheses. Doesn't matter how we want to think about it. If the infinity's in there, it's going to be a parenthesis. All right, so let's see. Okay, let's kind of explain this interval notation. So up here, if we were to write this in interval notation, well, we're going to go all the way this way. Well, what's all the way this way? Well, that's negative infinity. So we're going to have from negative infinity up to, well, we go all the way up to 0, and we said it had a bracket or it was closed circle, which means it's going to be less than or equal to. Now this one over here, it's going from 2, so we know we're going from 2, and we're going all the way to the right, so we're going to positive infinity. And remember, when we have infinity, we always have a parenthesis, and this one was open circle, so it's a parenthesis as well. And again, we can draw it with parentheses or we can draw it with open circles, and here we can draw it with brackets or closed circles. It doesn't matter how we do it. But then when we write it in interval notation, it's going to be the parentheses and brackets strictly. Okay. So some people like to go ahead and put brackets here because that's easier to do, and parentheses here because then they remember, okay, when I get to my interval notation, I need to be sure to write it in the proper manner. So what we're supposed to do here is write interval notation to describe the set of values shown. So here they're given to us in the open and closed circle format. So now what we have to do is write it into the interval notation format. Well, this is going from parenthesis because we have an open circle, a -4, comma, we're going up to 2, and now that's a closed circle, so that's a bracket. Okay. Now, what about this one? Well, this one with pointing to the left going to negative infinity, so we know we're going to go from negative infinity up to -3, but we don't include 3, so we put a parenthesis. Okay. Now here, they just want us to graph the inequality and then write interval notation. Now notice, we don't actually have numbers. So how are we supposed to do that? Well, what we do is we can just make a general number line and we label it with 1 point A. and we say now a or x is less than a. So again, if we want to put the open circle, which is, probably the standard, and then we're going to go to the left, okay? Now, how do we write that? Well, it's going to go from negative infinity up to a, but not include a, okay? So that's how we would do that one. What about here? Same thing. We're going to set up our number line and have an a. Well, now we're going to have a closed circle, and we're going to go that direction. Now, sometimes when you're drawing it yourself, trying to draw the line on top of the other line is hard. So some people just put the closed circle. They'd put a closed circle up here and do it like that to kind of represent it. Here I try to put it on the number line and then just draw a little bit above it. Well, again, we're going to negative infinity this way. So that's our start. And we're going up to a, and then we have that bracket. Okay. So again, open, closed, and parentheses, brackets. We could have done this, parenthesis that direction, and here we could have done a bracket that direction. So it all depends on what you have there. All right, so now we're doing the greater thans. Okay, well, let's do this. So now we have a over here. We'll just put it on that side. Now it's going to be greater than, so maybe let's put it above, and we'll go that direction. And so we know that it's going from a, but not including a, to positive infinity. Again, the infinities, whether it's positive or, in this case, the negatives, always has a parenthesis. Now here, what about this one? Well, again, if we start at a, and we're going to be greater than or equal to that. So maybe this time let's do a little change up. Now we're going to have a bracket, everything that direction. So then we have bracket a to positive infinity. Now again, we could have done a closed circle instead and done that one, and that was just as fine. That works just as well and represents the same thing. All right, so let's stop there and we'll come back for more.